Alright. It's me. We're here, finally. So, let me start by saying I've been thinking and talking about doing this for a very long time. It came about that I have some friends who do have either some podcast or multimedia network platform, if you will, and most of them are about sports because I do really enjoy sports. It's something I really love. But there's no bigger passion to me than music, and I don't know people that consume and enjoy music constantly as I do. To be fair, I'm kind of a audiophile, kind of crazy about it. I don't just listen to music all the time. I always like to discover old music or new music and learning about the history of it and the artistic nature of it, all that stuff. Like, it's literally my biggest passion. So, I thought to just be maybe a little different, and maybe talk about something I have the most knowledge of. I might one day turn this and talk a little bit about sports, probably mostly hockey, and maybe about movies. If my I always say year after year I need to get back into watching movie because I do enjoy watching movies. It's just with life and everything, I don't have much time for it, and also I find watching it on movies on Netflix at homes by myself gets really boring. I'm more of a go to the theater guy and actually pay money to justify the fact that I have to pay attention and being there in the moment. So, anyway, so right now it's only gonna be music. And I am recording this in very early September. So, basically, what I want to do is I want to talk about the records that have came out basically in 2025, and I'm gonna touch on that later. There's gonna be a little bit of 2024, and like I say, early September. Right now, I have heard I think 46 record who came out this year, and there's I think six or seven record in my new releases playlist on YouTube Music. So I have a lot of catching up to do. So this is only a little introduction that I'm gonna do just to explain how this show is gonna work, and pretty much that's it. So for a very lame introduction, I don't have a name for this, so I'm just gonna call it Mux Corner right now. Mux Music Corner, something like that. Who cares? And like I said, I want to talk about every new release of 2025. And for people who know me, I do something at the end of every year where I have a poster where I give stupid awards that I call the Muckies. It's either for best album of the year, also best songs of the year, always stuff like that, fun stuff. And because I do this all year, and now that I'm gonna go deeper into everything I've listened and what I thought about it. I do have to make a rating system, which I'm gonna talk a little later about it. I have to say that even though I'm saying 2025, because of the way I work, there's gonna be some of the late release of 2024 included in this, and that's how I deal every year. Basically, because the way music get released, there is some like all types of media and arts. There's some times of the year where not a lot of stuff come out, and for music, that's specifically in the month of December and January. And it start to get back into work in February. So not a lot of records released, basically around New Year's Eve and the holiday times. So and also there's a lot of moments in year where a lot of stuff come out, and most of it, like the hottest time for music release, is in autumn, especially in the month of November. So basically, what happens is because also the way I listen to music, I want to take time to actually digest it and understand it the best I can before I actually like put my trademark or opinion on it. So the way I will deal about it is if a record comes out in autumn and I didn't have time to listen to it, also because in December I stopped listening to new music and I just kind of have my own version of holiday music, which I just listen to and enjoy the holiday time and just relax. Don't have to put pressure on listening to new stuff. So there's stuff in autumn that sometimes I don't have the time to go to. So I just, to be fair, I just add it to 2025. So you'll see when I actually do the first episodes of this. There's gonna be album that came out in autumn, probably September, uh, October, November, December, all those months. Basically, there's gonna be records. It can be because I didn't have time to fully feel like I had a hold on what the album is before I judge it or whatever. And sometimes I just forget that something came out, and then I realize it the next year. So so this is gonna be happening. And now for the rating system, I just have to say your rating system usually doesn't matter much because at the end of the day, music is mostly very subjective. And even if there's like what would be considered technically the worst music to come out, anybody has the right to enjoy it. And I'm guilty of that too. There's music I listen to, I'm like, this is trash, but I enjoy it. Like, I love it. And sometimes you don't have to explain it. Sometimes you don't fully understand it. You just do. And basically, the phrase I'm gonna use a lot that I think is very important is that the only opinion that really matter is your own. So I can give goofy numbers or goofy remarks about why something I felt about something the way it did. It doesn't matter to how you feel about it. It's just basically a discussion to see if people feel the same way or how people see things different. And I think that's really the important thing about this. It's the very cool thing about art in general. Like somebody can put a duct tape on a banana on a wall and just call it art, and people are gonna lose their mind about it, think it's unique and great, and people are gonna be it's just a banana tape to the wall. So now for the rating system, like it's gonna be from the number. It's basically be on a scale from 0 to 11. I'm gonna touch on that and all the numbers, and it's not gonna be straight up numbers because if I'm gonna do a rating system, if I'm at least gonna do it and make it matter, I have to be very. I feel like I really have to be specific about and not just do stars and half out of five or whatever because that's not very specific. Most albums are gonna be on the same rating, and that's kind of weird. So there will be, your straight up 7 or whatever, but there's also gonna be like let's say a 9.1 or a 4.5, a 2.3. It can go crazy. So let's go from numbers at a time. To basically, I just if I could describe a rating from 0 to 1 by example with a word and how it feels. So quickly before I talk about the actual ratings, I need to talk about the purpose of the ratings. And what I mean by that is because rating, criticizing, analyzing music and art in general, to me is very, very different than what you would give to what most people see as ratings. And what most people see as ratings is basically the result to an exam. When you go to school, or at least when I went to school, the passing grade was at least a 6 out of 10. So I think, like I said, that number may be different for a lot of people, but the mentality is there. It's like you need this or you failed. It's bad or whatever. Music is not really that way. You know, if you think about it. So to me, the way I'm gonna put it is, be to me, to have an album that would say have a negative review has to be under 3 out of 10. That's the way I see it personally. Where, like I said, compared to the exam, the comparison, if you have under 6, well, you failed. Well, that's a big difference. So now that I've said that, let's move on to the first rating. So between 0 and 1, this one is probably gonna be the rarest one I'm gonna give. I hope I never give this to any release, because to me that has to be a rating that I throw only to if I heard something that I felt was the one of the worst thing I've ever heard. And like I say, this is gonna be the rarest rating out there I'm gonna give, simply because if something I think I'm not gonna enjoy or whatever, I'm probably not gonna listen to it unless I'm very curious about it. Or like movies, sometimes people are gonna say this is so bad you have to watch it. It can have the same effect here, but a zero, like straight up zeros, like I cannot just throw that around like frisbees. I hate when music critics or even movie critics just throw out 0 out of 10 at anything just because they didn't like it or something. Like it has to go the extra mile. It has to be a unique incident or whatever. So, worst of all time between 0 and 1, probably gonna see me. There's a high chance you never see me throw that around, but you never know. So, it's out there. Now, between 1 and 2, the word I would use for that ranking would be a terrible record. So, to me, a terrible record is like something that's not worth. I wouldn't say to anybody to listen to it, really. I, to me, it has almost close to zero redeeming quality. Like, it, to me, something that lands in there probably has to be the worst records of the year, unless, like I say, something goes the extra mile and go for the ranking below it. So that's what I would say between 1 and 2, a terrible record. Now the difference I would say for between a 2 and a 3, which I would call a bad record, to me the difference would be if you dissect it, or you can point out things that are good about it despite most of it not being good. Like you can say maybe one or two track were pretty good, or the production or some of the dynamics, the thoughts about it, the purpose. Sometimes you can point out something that was not bad about it, but it doesn't save the record. And still, I wouldn't say to anybody to go listen to it just for that. Maybe just say, oh well, listen to that one or two song and move on with your life. Don't go actually listen to the record. So that's what I would say between 2 and 3. Now between 3 and 4, that's where things start to get interesting. Like I said in my little thing at the beginning, I say up to now is no longer a negative record, a negative review, sorry. But the way I would say is, even though I wouldn't say it's a bad record or everything, I would still say that this rating and the one I'm gonna talk later are still not on the enjoyment side of things. So between 3 and 4, that's why I call mediocre. So usually that's a record that, even though I don't think it was bad at all, I at least felt bored or not interested. And sometimes that's the thing about subjective opinion. And sometimes I listen to something I like, I don't really like this, but I don't feel it's because of the actual music necessarily. I just feel like it's not made for me at all and it's not helping. And sometimes that can be difficult. Like I say, criticizing music, and you listen to something, and even though you're not enjoying it at all, you don't feel like it deserves to be poo pooed on, if I can say those words. So that's where I use mediocre. Like, I personally was not impressed, I didn't really care, but I do feel like people who are into this kind of style or whatever can really get a knack out of it. So, like I said, I don't want to like shit on it and just say, well, I didn't like it, I didn't enjoy it, but it's not bad. So, mediocre. And now for between 4 and 5, that's what I call a mid record. I feel this is pretty that explains itself pretty well. And like say it's mid, you can say, well, half of the songs are pretty good, well the other half are not really good. And or you can go, I feel like every song on there are okay, like every single song they're putting for par. That still doesn't feel like you're listening to something that's really worth your attention, really. So that's where I would say that's mid. Now between 5 and 6, now I would say at that point that's where things ends up more on the enjoyment side of things, for me at least. So between 5 and 6 is what I call a fine record, where I see good things going for it. Maybe the way I would describe it is, like I said earlier, I have a new release playlist on YouTube Music, and I whatever new release that I want to listen to it, I put it on there, and I listen to records one after another. And what I would say of fine record is I was like, well, it was pretty good, but I don't feel like I'm gonna remember this thing existed really. So I usually delete it from the new release when I feel like I've been done listening to it, and I probably never listen to it again, unless it might have some interesting song I might come back to, and I might say, well, it was pretty good, so you might want to check it out if it's your thing or whatever. So now between 6 and 7, I would say now the big difference is when I'm done listening to it once again from in my new release playlist and I delete it, I might download it, have it on my phone, so I can listen to it at work or while driving. And the difference is, while I'm listening to an album this way, it's a deeper listening experience. So what I would say is solid. Sometimes I just like, you know what, I want to re-listen to it in a different matter, in a different way. So that's what I do. I download it on my phone, listen to it while I'm driving. And sometimes what happens is I listen to it only once. I'm like, well, all right, well I did it, and even though I was compelled, I was interested in listening to it this way. It didn't grab my attention enough to going back to it again in that kind of way. So that's where I would say is a solid record. It goes the extra mile where I was interested in listening to it in my work time, but only once. Now we're going to between 7 and 8, where now I'm using the word a good record. A good record is, once again, I download it, I listen to it, and I'm like, you know what? I feel like listening to it a bunch more. And maybe there's very strong songs on there. It might have some issues or whatever, but that's still a good record. I like go back to it and I keep listening to it, and at least I go back and listen to it a handful of times. Okay, now between 8 and 9, it's similar to good, but only I would say the only difference is, to me, that's where I start praising the record and start maybe saying to people, like, even though it's not your thing or something, it's really worth checking. Well, they made a great record. It's worth going to listen to try. And like I say, that's the point of this, is maybe somebody listened to what I said about a record and they go, I wonder if I would like that, and they go listen to it. And that's where great stands out for. Like, I would say that the big difference I would give is maybe to the next tier I'm gonna give is, I feel it was extremely good, but it lacks the extra mile to say maybe it's one of the best albums of the year. That's where I would say is the big difference. And that big difference is found in the next tier, which is between 9 and 10. And between 9 and 10 is the word I use is amazing. And that's where I start thinking about, this might make the best album of the year discussion, at least being mentioned there. And now I do have an extra nugget up there, which is the 11 out of 10. And compared to the 0 out of 10, which is the worst thing of all time, 11, I give it to usually a record that I enjoyed in a way that made me feel like this is one of the best thing I've ever heard. And that will happen. Like, to me, the way I would say is, last year my favorite record of the year was the new Peter Gabriel album, and that one literally blew my mind. It's probably one of my favorite record of his, and that's a record I would give it 11 out of 10. It goes the extra mile. It's one of my favorite things. That's where things go beyond the muckies, beyond everything, where it's more of a personal thing. It goes the extra mile for me. Also, an extra thing I need to say is that, I mean, you're probably gonna realize this as soon as I drop my first couple of episodes. You'll see that, well, I'm more mainly of a rock and roll guy, rock, punk, metal, those kind of stuff. I do try to listen to a lot of other genres of music, but that's mainly where I go for. Alright, well, now that I'm done talking about the ratings, I would say that I'm pretty much done talking about everything. I mean, I don't want to yap forever about this. This is just supposed to be a little intro in case you were wondering about how this thing is gonna function. And now the only thing I have to say is thank you for listening to this. I really hope you guys enjoy the content that's gonna come out with this. I'm gonna probably release the intro at the same time I release at least one episode. Basically, my mentality going into this is that I don't even know if I'm gonna enjoy doing this, but I wanna try new things. I wanna experiment and, like I said, just find a way to share music and talk about it. And if you guys enjoy it or have any comments or anything, I would welcome anything that could be said about this, so I can maybe feel better about myself while doing it, or maybe have different point of view of how I could do things differently. I'm welcome any critic, and just enjoy. Hopefully you guys enjoy. So now that I'm done saying anything, I'm gonna stop yapping and actually release some videos. So once again, thank you for listening to this. Hope you enjoy the content that's gonna come out of it, and thank you very much again.